Hi guys, and welcome to another Python GUI development tutorial video. Uh, my name is Bo Milanovic, and in our last video we have seen finally how to convert a Python application to an executable file. And that's all great, right? It turned out it was very simple to do, and it was an easy task. And maybe some of you were thinking, wait, that should have been harder. I don't know. But what we want to really do right now is you actually create a setup, so that when the user double clicks the application that he or she has downloaded, it's taking them through that installation wizard. Now, why do we really need an installation wizard when our application is working just fine as designed? If we were to go back to our dist folder, which is where our application lives right now, and I double click it, you can see that it's working just fine. However, yes, in this case we really don't need an installation wizard. We can just distribute application like this. And if this were the case, normally I would encourage you to distribute the application as not as an installation wizard, but as the application itself whenever possible to save the time and resources. But imagine this. Let me right click here and I'm going to say new text document and call this text document readme. And in this text document I'm just going to say simply double click the application and save it. Now, when we distribute the files to the user, when the user installs the application, we want this readme to be included as well. And not necessarily readme, there may be a bunch of other files that we want to include aside from this executable file, like help files and some other software, for example. I have recently written Qt application in Python, but that application also required a part written in C# in order to convert some Microsoft Office documents. So I needed to write a separate application in C#, but when I distributed that to the user, she wasn't even aware of it because it was living in the program files directory. There was no way, in other words, there was no way for me to embed a C# application within the Python one. So there was just a separate .executable file that's called from my main Python file. But the point I'm trying to make right here, I needed to distribute both of those applications as one setup. So that's the whole point. If you need anything more than just one file, you probably want an installation wizard, for the better user experience. Now, when we're thinking about installation wizard, you probably guys have heard of these wizards such as Install Shield, or Wise installation wizard, or Microsoft installation wizard, or I think it's called Windows installation wizard right now. And those are all popular ones, but the one we'll be using right here is called InnoSetup, and that one is also fairly popular. I've seen it floating around, and it's free. And Install Shield, I believe, is not free. At least their main edition is not free. I'm not sure about the other one. So I'm just going to Google InnoSetup, and I'm going to visit their website, InnoSetup. And you can see right here, it also has a very, 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 very good documentation. But the one thing we want right now is download InnoSetup. And this is obviously a Windows software. So you can see right here, you can download it easily. Just click whatever country is closer to you. I currently live in the US. I clicked US, but if Netherlands is closer, probably the better idea to do. And you can see it's fairly actively maintained. Right now it's May 16th. But it is May 16th, so it's my birthday, by the way. Oh wow. Happy birthday, Bo. Anyway, you can see that it was the last version was released in October 13, 2013, and I've never had any problems with it. So once you downloaded this file, go ahead and install it. I have already done that step, so I'm going to go to Start, and it's going to show up here probably for you as it did for me. But just in case it doesn't, just type and it's going to come up here. Now, when you run this, you can see that you're presented with this welcome dialog, and you can create a new empty script file. You can open an existing script file. You have a bunch of example scripts, and you can create a new script file using the script wizard. This is what we're going to do. InnoSetup basically generates a script on that's kind of a programming language. It's actually based on a programming language called Pascal. I don't think it's pure Pascal, but it's definitely based on it. So we'll be able to edit that later on. if we need to. But for now, we're just going to base our installation wizard on the create new script file using the script wizard. So I'm going to make sure that this rating button is set and hit OK. And standard wizard right now. Now the application name for us is PyDataMan. Application version right now I believe is 0.1. The application publisher in this case would be PythonBo. And these don't really matter. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they'll matter if you're building like a serious application, but it's not going to affect the workings of the application in any way. The application website, well, let's say dev.bomilanovic.com, which is my blog that I write. So then I hit next. You can see right here, application destination base folder, you have the program files folder or a custom one. I'll leave it as default as a program files folder, and that's going to install the application. By default is C/program files or program files x86. In our case, if you're running 64-bit Windows. And the application folder name is, again, PyDataMan in our case, and that's basically telling it, don't install in the root of program files folder, create a new folder within it called PyDataMan and install there. You also have the option to check allow user to change the application folder. We probably even encountered that before. When you are clicking next in an installation wizard, you can change the installation folder. So yeah, we can just leave that on. This application doesn't need a folder. For this application, you can check that, but we're not going to do that because we wanted to make it look as professional as possible, for the future proof, so to say. I'm going to hit next again. Now we need to find our application main executable file, and this is set up as an example path right now. So I'll hit browse, and I'm going to go to the C users simulator is what I call my VirtualBox machine user, and I'm going to find that dist folder, and simply I'm going to find that executable application that we have created in the previous video. Double click it. You have the option here allowing the user to start the application after setup is finished, and the application doesn't have a main executable file. If you have to add something, just do it. Other application files is what I've been talking about a little bit earlier. So if I click add files here, it's going to point me to that directory, and I'm going to click readme.txt here. So this is basically anything else that you want to be put in that program files folder. If you recall, when I was designing the skeletal structure of our PyDataMan application, I mentioned how the application itself cannot write directly to the program files folder because it is write protected. So this is why we use that app data folder, which is used for storing settings, etc. Now the installation can. So in the installation runtime, you can write to a program files directory just fine without elevating privileges and all that. So if you want to store for some reason settings in the program files folder, what you could do technically is create a blank ini file and just add it here and then use it within the Python application itself, although that's a very bad idea. Okay, so I'll click next here. Application start menu folder name is also PyDataMan. You also have allow user to disable start menu. All these kinds of options that are fantastic. So create an uninstall icon start menu folder. I don't need to check any of those. I don't need to explain them because they're very self-explanatory. I hit next. Now this is the cool part. You know those beautiful terms and conditions that you and I always read when we're installing software, better known as end user license agreement, that you always have to click I agree in order to install it. This is where you put it, and you simply put it as a text file. So let's experiment with that a little bit. I'm going to go to my dist folder, and I'm going to create a new text document called EULA. Say do whatever you want with it. That's going to be our license. Let's go back to in a setup, and I'm going to say the license is EULA. Information file shown before installation. This is the file that's, I believe, going to be embedded within the installation wizard itself. That's telling the user something like, wait, before you install my software, you need to do this and that, or something like that. In our case, we don't need that at all, but some software packages may depend on other software packages. I can't remember an example right now. And similarly, you have this information file shown after installation. Although I'm not 100% sure if this will be embedded, because this may just be the case. Like, for example, you put a README here that's going to pop up right after installation, whether the user wants it or not. I'm going to hit next here. You have the languages here to pick. For now, I'm going to join. This is my native tongue, by the way, Serbian. But I'm going to just pick English. Hit next again. Custom compiler output folder. Yeah, why don't we do that as well? I'm going to create a new folder in the same folder that we had before, where the executable file lives. Create a new folder called setup. Hit OK. Compiler output base file name. Please don't name it setup. When I'm using Windows and I download a bunch of things, and a month later I go into my downloads folder, there's a trillion of different setup.exe files that I have no idea what they're for. And even when you start the application, the installation wizard, sometimes it doesn't even tell you, oh, by the way, I'm installing this. So I'm going to name mine PyDataMan setup. Custom setup icon file is, as its name says, you can specify the icon you want for that setup file that we're going to generate. I don't have an icon right now, and it's going to use the Windows default icon, so that's fine. Setup password, as its name says again, is the password that the user may be prompted to type if you want him or her, to be kind of like setup should be password protected, although I haven't seen this being used a whole lot. Hit next. Okay. The InnoSetup script wizard has detected presence of InnoSetup preprocessor and can therefore use defined compiler directives to simplify your script. Although this is not necessary, it will make it easier to manually change the script later. Here's the thing. This will only exist if during the installation of the InnoSetup itself you have elected to install this InnoSetup preprocessor. It is a very useful thing, but not particularly for our application. So I'm going to uncheck this for now, because there's probably some of you at least who have not installed this preprocessor. So I'm going to uncheck this, and it's going to be regular installation. Hit next. It says you have successfully completed InnoSetup script wizard, and hit finish. Would you like to compile a script now? No, thank you, but no. Let's go over the script a little bit. So you see, basically you could have typed all this by yourself, but the installation wizard helped quite a bit. And you can modify this with the documentation stuff. You can read the documentation on InnoSetup online, see how you can modify it. Some of the stuff, this is automatically generated, by the way. App name PyDataMan. See, you can see all this stuff that we have put in our during our script creation wizard, or whatever it's called. So you see all this cool stuff, but there's so many more that this installation wizard or that script creation wizard doesn't even offer you as an option. So what I am going to do, I'm not going to demonstrate every single bit of it, but what I'm going to do is go back to Opera browser, open a new tab, and type InnoSetup documentation, and it's going to point you to their website. Very good documentation, as I mentioned earlier. Very, very, very good. And I'm going to click right here on creating installations, but then I don't really need this part. I'm going to say script format overview. Well, the script format overview is, like its name says, it's an overview, but you can see right here you have the setup section, type section, components, tasks, there's files, icons, and all that good stuff. You can see that we have tasks, files, icons, and all that. We don't have all of them, so you can see how many there can be. But what do we have? We have files. So let's click on the files section and see all the options that we can put. So you see here flags, for example, is kind of options to pass to a file. It says only if it doesn't exist. You know, install this file only if it doesn't exist. Unit server uninstall. I'm not sure what this means, to be honest. You see that readme.txt flags is readme, so we can do that. For example, we can manually add ignore version. So let me do this. Is put is readme here first. Ignore version. I know that it's added for a reason, but I can't remember why exactly. I think it has something to do with the different being cross-compatible between different versions of Windows. I remember having issues when I removed this. I wasn't able to install it in Windows 8. But oh well, just leave it there. Don't worry about it. We can see all this stuff that we have right here: permissions, attributes, you know, flags. Look at the flags. You know, 34-bit, 64-bit, allow unsafe files. And let's go to ignore version, see what it does. Don't compare version info at all. Replace existing files regardless of their version number. You have so many things you can do. You can definitely create a fantastic installer in InnoSetup, especially if you're manually writing a script file. Although you don't have to manually write it. There's a bunch of oops, yes, I do want to save. So let's also save this while we're at it. Setup script. Setup script 2. I'm not sure what this. Oh, I'm sorry. This is me trying to open the file. Anyway, there's so many examples that you can find in the directory where you installed InnoSetup. So yeah, I mean, you can base your installation off of that. That's what I usually do, especially when you realize how this works. And it's fairly simple. You can see here like source, get the PyDataMan, destination dir app, and app right here is defined somewhere. Well, it's defined as the program files directory, which I can't find right now. But anyway, where is our program files directory? Anyway, so it's going to install it to the program files directory. Maybe the app is a global variable. Now all we need to do is I'm going to hit compile and see if it's going to give me any errors or anything like that, but it doesn't appear to have given me any errors. So you remember that we have selected that path where we want the output there to be the setup folder. So I'm going to go back there and I'm going to open the disk. You can see that we have a setup folder right now, and if I double click it, there's the PyDataMan setup, which is about also 11.6 megabytes in size. If I double click it, you can see that we're greeted with a welcome to the PyDataMan setup wizard. I hit next. Our license is displayed right here. Do whatever you want with it. You see that I can't click next unless I agree with it. Hit next. This is the program files directory that the application is going to be installed to. I hit next. This is the start menu folder we've defined. Next. Create a desktop icon. Why not? Next. Install. And you have the options of viewing README and launching PyDataMan. And I believe this view readme.txt files appears only because we have added this flag as README. So I'm not going to check any of these because I want to see them manually. I'm just going to hit finish, and you can see the application exited and all that, setup wizard. So I'm going to go to C, program files x86. It's a 32-bit application. And I believe that what's the name of it? PyDataMan. That's the folder name. You can see all this stuff that we have right here. One of them, the main one, being our application itself, which still works just fine. Excuse me. We also have our readme.txt file. Simply double-click the application, and we also have our uninstallation file, which is generated automatically by the InnoSetup. This uninstallation part can also be modified within the script. So you can see here from on the left the documentation. You have the uninstall delete section, uninstall run section. For example, what you could do, and the InnoSetup has no way of recognizing this automatically. What you could do is modify the script in such a manner that when the user uninstalls the application, that app data directory that we've created that contains our database, etc., should be deleted as well. So I'm going to hit uninstall right now and see how that works. Just asking you should you want to completely remove it. Hit yes, and look at it. It's beautiful. It's go back. But if I go back to go to run and I hit app data, you can see that the PyData is still there. So that's what I was talking about. That's what you could modify to delete this as well. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video as well. There's probably going to be one more incoming very soon. But this is basically it. You have concluded the course on how to create a GUI Python application using the Qt framework. And I would like to take this time to thank you all for watching and being patient with me. I know that probably sometimes I wasn't as clear as I could have been. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me, you can send me a message on Udemy, you can send me a message on YouTube, wherever you want, so that I can improve these videos in the future. If you have any questions as well, I'm at your disposal. You can visit my website at dev.bomilanovic.com. Where you can find contact information as well. You can visit my GitHub profile, which I'll talk about probably in the next video. So yeah, again, thank you all for watching, and I hope you learned a lot from this course, and if not a lot, at least you learned a little. As you can see, Python is and can be a very powerful language. Like I mentioned in the previous video, I've written an application with nearly 45,000 lines of code, and it runs very well. And when I tell people it's written in Python, they're all surprised and say, wow, how come in Python? Now, should Python be your first choice when it comes to building Windows applications? Well, that really depends. Python is a very easy language, but I will admit that it's not built to handle GUI. Or in other words, there are other languages that possibly handle GUI better than Python. One of them being C#. There are obvious advantages to C#, but there are obvious disadvantages to C#, mainly being it's not cross-platform. It can only run on Windows. Well, it's designed to only run on Windows, but there are ways to make it run cross-platform as well. And you have a beautiful Visual Studio IDE, which is fantastic, which I have right here, the latest version, 2013. So all that stuff, but the choice is up to you. I had the same dilemma when I was starting that application. I mentioned, should I write it in C# or should I write it in Python? And I saw writing it in Python more of a challenge for me to see, can I do it? And yes, turns out, yes, I can definitely do it. Qt's a wonderful framework to work with as well. Thank you all, and I hope you have the rest of your life, I guess.